AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome.
No one with AIDS has been cured.
AIDS is now the leading cause of death among young people in this country.
In the early 1980s, the AIDS epidemic swept across the United States and around the world. In the US, it was first noted in the gay community, but in the nearly 40 years since, it has affected all races, genders, and ages. Over 35 million people have died from AIDS. It is a global tragedy.
It was really, really scary. You know, I am HIV negative. I don't see what reason I am. I, for many years, lived in fear that when is it going to be me? And the unfairness of it. And how the most beautiful, talented people are no longer with us. You know, but I'm still here.
Scientists believe the HIV strain that causes AIDS was first transmitted to humans in Central Africa in the 1920s, but it did not become an epidemic until the early 1980s.
People started getting sick, and people all of a sudden were like kind of losing weight, like really, really bad, and everybody was like, "What is this? What's happening? What's going on?" And here it was AIDS, and they didn't even have a real name for it. They called it GRID. It was like a gay-related disease, they called it, and people were just literally wasting away and dying.
In 1980 and 81, the Center for Disease Control reported mysterious outbreaks of pneumosis T. pneumonia sarcoma among gay men in New York and Los Angeles. These two diseases are common in people with weakened immune systems. Over the next 2 years, the disease spread rapidly, killing thousands. Many were young gay males who had been healthy. In fact, AIDS was not even called AIDS at first, but rather GRID, gay-related immune deficiency.
So I've been around long enough that I remember the early days of the epidemic between 1981 and 1995, where there were no treatments that worked. And many people got sick and many people died. But starting in 1995, a new class of treatment called the protease inhibitor became available. And since then, many new treatments have become available so that HIV can be a chronic manageable disease.
Many in society blamed the disease on gay men and suggested that it was God's punishment, a gay plague. Many people were afraid to interact or touch someone with AIDS, and some even wanted to segregate those with HIV. In 1983 and 84, researchers discovered that the HIV virus was the cause of AIDS and that it could be transmitted through IV drug use, blood transfusions, and from an infected mother to her fetus. The medical discovery of the disease's origin meant researchers could begin to work on finding treatments.
The first awareness that I had of HIV was just in the newspaper as the first cases began to appear, mostly in the cities of New York and Los Angeles, but almost within a couple years, which would have been 85, perhaps 86, we started having people in the neighborhood who came down with HIV or AIDS-related symptoms. And we just realized something was happening. A couple people in the church early on actually got sick. No one knew what was really going on.
However, much of society still viewed it as a gay disease, spread through male-to-male sexual contact. In Philadelphia's gay neighborhood, AIDS took a tremendous toll. Young men who had been healthy began to get sick rapidly. Within months, an otherwise healthy person could become sick and die.
It was difficult. I wasn't diagnosed in the early 80s. I was diagnosed more in the mid to late 80s. And of course, the early 80s really, nobody really talked about AIDS until like 81, 82, 83. And it was very difficult. I mean, the community didn't really care. The government didn't really care. It was mainly all gay men, and nobody really cared. And it was a very difficult, scary time.
Many religions and places of worship in Philadelphia ignored the AIDS crisis and would not even provide funeral services for those who died of it. Even in death, people were denied basic dignities. However, the Episcopal Church of St. Luke in the Epiphany, which is located in the neighborhood but had parishioners from all walks of life, stepped in and agreed to provide funeral services to anyone who had died of AIDS, no matter their religious background.
A lot of people in this neighborhood were sick and dying, and I felt that this congregation, we've been here since 1840, needed to just be here for people. We started doing some advocacy work around the politics of AIDS because resources were being denied. Hospitals were admitting people, but not always willingly. There were even funeral homes that would not take people who had died from AIDS. There were families who would not pick up their child's body.
With the devastating spread of the disease, the government was slow to respond. There was little money for AIDS research or for the care of those suffering from it. President Reagan didn't even mention AIDS publicly until 1985, after 12,000 people had already died, and didn't give a formal speech on AIDS until 1987. The Philadelphia gay community saw their neighborhood decimated by the disease. They saw a larger society that was indifferent or hostile, and a government that they believed wasn't doing nearly enough. So they began to organize and advocate for those with HIV, because I felt no one else would.
I was on my way to becoming a classics professor, and then the AIDS epidemic hit my life, and friends started getting sick. And a few of my friends said, you should get involved with ACT UP. They're this great group, and they're really committed to bring an end to the AIDS epidemic. And so I visited my first meeting actually in London, and it was such an exciting, energetic group.
In 1987, the Philadelphia branch of ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, was founded as an activist group to bring attention to the disease. They staged die-ins and participated in vocal disruptive protests to highlight the inadequate public health policy and lack of advancement in treatment.
I got involved with ACT UP because my friends were dying. And it was a really, really scary time. The government was doing nothing to protect my community, and my friends were dying, and they weren't noticing.
This continued pressure helped push for more funding to advance the medical research. Scientists developed and then improved drug regimens to help keep HIV at bay. The first treatment for HIV/AIDS was AZT, developed in 1987. It suppressed HIV in many, but had horrific side effects. As the years progressed, combination drug therapy was developed. A major breakthrough was achieved in 1996 with the creation of the protease inhibitor drugs. Researchers discovered that a triple drug therapy could halt and reduce the HIV virus. In the 1980s, the average life expectancy following an AIDS diagnosis was approximately 1 year. Today, HIV-positive people can live a normal lifespan, and some can control their HIV by taking as little as 1 pill a day, though there is still no cure. But there is more to be done. The drugs can be expensive, and the disease continues to spread among those who don't have access to or can't afford the treatment. Philadelphia has 3 times the national average of people living with AIDS or HIV. ACT UP in Philadelphia continues to meet each week at St. Luke in the Epiphany and advocate for those infected by HIV. But they now focus more on prevention and obtaining medication and housing for impoverished people with HIV. Although there is so much work still to be done, the AIDS crisis did galvanize the gay community, and the perception of the disease and the gay population has changed significantly. Overall, people are more accepting, and there is a better understanding of the disease and those who suffer from it. The Philadelphia story of the AIDS epidemic is one of both tragedy and triumph. The AIDS crisis destroyed families, devastated a community, and deprived the city of some of its youngest and brightest people. But it also caused the community to support each other and to fight for better treatment for all who suffer from AIDS, a fight that continues to this day.
They are afraid to get tested because of fear of what friends, family, and colleagues will say. Fear of being abandoned by their loved ones. Fear of losing their jobs. Fear of finding out the truth. So they close their eyes.